Good evening, Wilmington Yearly Meeting. I am delighted to be communicating with you and just so devastated that I'm not there with you in person. I don't know if you have all heard, if somebody's told you, but I wanted to let you know why I'm not there in person. When I came to Wilmington Yearly Meeting before, I had 3 little boys. I'll show you a picture of my family in a minute. About 2 years ago, another boy joined our family, and we've been trying to adopt him for about a year. And the other day, in the night, in the evening, we found out that the Supreme Court is going to try to hear his case today, which is the last day of the court sessions before vacation. And next year, when they come back, they won't hear his case because he's over 18. So today we are going to adopt Elijah or find out that we can never adopt him. So that was really big news. I checked into my flight and I packed my bags and I was like, well, I'm going to Wilmington. I'm going to miss potentially adopting my child. And then at the last minute, it just felt terrible. And I thought I needed to investigate and make sure that I've looked at all of my options. So I called Hannah and we talked about things we could do. And so we came up with this, and I hope it's okay. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm gonna give you an update on the school and talk about one of the things that I have observed or learned. And then one of my favorite parts of these gatherings is Q&As, and I love to talk with people. We obviously can't do that right now, but there are some questions that people ask frequently, so I thought I would answer those. And then if anybody has any more questions, please email me or get in touch with me to set up a video chat. I'd love to talk with anyone. So that's how we're going to do it. Before we begin, I want you to meet Elijah, which we can do. I can't bring him because he doesn't have a visitor visa, but he's here. So you could see him.
Hi.
Yeah. So this is Elijah. Would you like to say anything to them?
Hi. Thank you for making my mom stay here with me.
Thank you. Thank you. That's Elijah. And I love him very much. Thank you. I think that maybe Nancy, well, at this point, I'm Nikki. I'm the director of FUM's ministries in Belize City. I think my screen is jagging a little bit, and I don't know why that's happening, but I don't think it affects my voice, so I'm going to keep going and hopefully it will stop. I'm going to share my screen here and show you some pictures of what's going on. So I just got to the end of my first term in Belize City, and I have been here for 3 years. We have a church, a school, and a community center here in Belize City. And I don't know why that's not coming up. There we go. So I want to talk to you about each of those things. And maybe more importantly, I want to tell you some of the stories of the kids that have come through our center. Well, they're part of our community. I guess I haven't been here long enough for people to have come through, but I can tell you some stories about people that are here, part of our community right now. And one of the things that I love about these stories is that they're kingdom of God stories, and that although we look different and we talk different and we think differently here in Belize, I don't think our stories are really that different from the stories that you could probably tell from your last 3 years. This is a picture of my family. So you see the little boys are not so little anymore. They're getting really big. And there's Elijah. There's my husband, Brian. The boys are doing amazing in school. They're enjoying their summer, which is filled with far too many video games, in my opinion. And I think that's probably appropriate. And Brian is doing well as also. He is getting ready to go to Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks to begin a master's degree at Georgetown University. So I have a lot of feelings about that, but mostly I'm excited for him. So we're doing well here. Then we have the school, and I think most of you are pretty familiar with the school, but just in case there's anyone that doesn't know what we do here, Belize Friends School started about 28 years ago. It was begun by Sadie Vernon, who was at the time the only Quaker in Belize. And it is a remedial school for kids that haven't been able to pass what's called PSC, which is a primary school examination. This is a test, a really big test that kids in Belize have to pass before they can go to high school. So it's a big deal. Unfortunately, sometimes kids get derailed early in elementary school and they are socially promoted. So then they get to time to take this test and they don't have the skills to pass it. So they can come to our school, which means that I get to love all these kids. So I'm really happy about that. Our school attempts to have a holistic program. So we address their academic needs, by schooling them. Excuse me, but we also address their physical needs. We have a breakfast snack, which is funded by USFW. We usually have a school lunch program. We address their mental health needs. We connect kids with counselors when necessary. We address their spiritual needs. We have devotions every morning and a church service every week. And Oscar, who I think you probably know also, he is our pastor who came from Kenya to work with us here. So Oscar and I provide some pastoral care and counseling. We function as chaplains for the school. Basically, we just try to assess the needs of each group of kids that we have in a given year and do whatever we can to address those needs. We cannot meet every need by any means, but we try to address them. And during the pandemic, we had to be creative in the ways we addressed these different aspects of a human person. One of the things that we did was depending on what the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health said we could do, we adapted our academic program accordingly. So at different times we had paper-based programs, online programs, and in-person programs. We were in person as much as possible because our kids are not kids that are like, you can't just hand them a piece of paper and be like, here, learn this. That doesn't work for them. I was very grateful to have at different times we had cell phones and tablets in order to be able to connect our kids with our staff. Those were funded largely by Western Yearly Meeting and the COVID Solidarity Fund. That was so vital for our education time during the pandemic. And I'm really grateful for that. Something about our school also is that when our kids graduate, my hope for them is that they are not just able to take a test, but that they have the study skills and the life skills they need to go on to high school or trade school or whatever they want to do, and do it well. And probably what is most important to me is that I want every kid that leaves our school to know that they matter, that they are important, that they're precious children of God, that they are a gift to the world. We have one student at our school who was here even when I first came to visit in 2018. I'm going to call her Kay. She, like many of our kids, she had a rough childhood. And as a result, she struggled in school, both academically and socially. Normally, our program is only 1 or 2 years long, depending on if kids need to start with the reading program or if they can go straight into the PSE prep program. But Kay kept being not quite ready to move on to high school. So we kept her and she kept coming back, which is something that's not to be taken for granted. Then this year she came back just matured. She was able to focus on her work. She was able to interact with the teachers and the other students in peaceful ways, although still with lots of spirit. She was able to pass her classes and give her teachers every confidence that she will be able to excel in high school. And she graduated this year. Kay is rambunctious, affectionate, and full of good humor. And I'm so proud of her. I'm thrilled that she graduated. Also a little bit sad for me because I love her and I'm going to miss her, but mostly thrilled for her. Our church is amazing. I have to tell you, I've never been in a church that's quite like our church. We started our church, I think, about 7 years ago, when some Belizeans who'd become Quakers in Scotland came back to Belize and called the Friends School to ask if there was a Friends meeting in Belize. And Dale Graves answered the phone and he said to them, well, if you come, there will be. So they came and there was. And after a little while, there was a student named Jeremy who connected especially with Oscar. They were very close, and Jeremy started to come to church. And then he started to invite friends, and the friends started to invite cousins. And now we have a church that's full of teenage boys. And they're amazing. During the pandemic, our worship had to be socially distanced. We at times were only able to have 10 people in a service. So we did a sort of shift system. So kids would kind of take turns coming from week to week. During this time, most of our adults stopped coming, some because they had to go home to another country, some because they wanted to live not in Belize City during the pandemic, and others because they wanted to make space for teenagers to be able to go to church. So the adults would stay home to make extra slots in the 10 slots for the teenagers. So it was mostly just me and Oscar and Chris. And I'll show you a picture of Chris in a minute. He's our pastor in training. But it was just us 3 adults with all of these teenagers. And we came to realize that we could not sustain being a church with a youth ministry. Rather, what we are is a youth church. So we had a conversation with our kids and we said, we are not able to do all the things. If you want something to happen at church, you need to make it happen. So throughout the last few years, we've had kids helping to plan outings. We've had them getting involved with snack dispersal or picking out snacks. We've had them choosing music sometimes. There's a couple boys that often run the PowerPoint presentation for church. There's another couple that usually do the reading of the verses, and another couple that usually do joys and concerns. When we do joys and concerns, we call by name every person who's at church that Sunday, and everyone gets an opportunity to say what they're happy about or nervous about. I think what the most common one I think that I hear is that they're happy for life, happy to get up in the morning, happy for health and strength. And they're great. So these guys have really taken initiative often to make the changes in the church that they want to see. This is a picture of 2 Christmases ago. We had some extra money from our Christmas program. And so we used it to buy some meals, and we brought the meals to people experiencing homelessness in our downtown area. And they really did it with vigor. Oscar told me, I stayed at the car to to be at the car when people would need to come back for more meals. And Oscar went out with the guys, and he said that they would run like in a group of 3 or 4, they would run up to a person and they would each hold out a plate of food and they would say, "Here's your food, miss, here's your food, sir." And then somebody would look up at them and the boys would look at them in the face, which I think is so important, because so frequently when people are experiencing homelessness, everyone around them tries to pretend they don't exist. Like they sort of become invisible. And to have these boys looking and talking to them, like looking them in the eyes, they weren't just giving a meal, but they were giving attention. And it was beautiful. Somehow during the pandemic, although we've had all of this distancing, our church has grown. We have more boys now than we did at the beginning of the pandemic. When we have a church outing, we have, I say boys, we actually have a couple of girls too. But we have about 30 young people that come to our church outings when we have them, which is amazing. Here we have a picture. I don't know, I might be hiding Oscar's face. Let me see if I can fix my, okay. So there's Oscar here. Well, it's on my right. It should be on your right too. Okay, Oscar's on the right. He's our pastor. On our left is Chris, who is our pastor in training. He just before the summer, he became our outreach minister. He has been so faithfully engaged throughout the pandemic. He's there every Sunday. He tries to develop relationships with the kids. He preaches frequently. He gets involved with the neighborhood a lot. He's also our caretaker and warden at the school, but he has extensive network in Belize City, and he knows so many people who need things, and he just will leave work for a little while and be like, "I'll be right back." And then when you say, "What did you do?" He's like, "Oh, I brought some food to my friend who's dying of diabetes." Or he just has these people, and he finds ways. When I met him, he was spending a lot of his time doing cleaning and maintenance for a primary or a daycare, without getting paid for it. He just wanted to contribute to his community and take care of the kids. He's a really wonderful person, and I'm grateful to have him with us on our staff. We have another pastor in training also called Clifton, and Chris and Clifton are taking classes. This is really cool. They are taking classes at Friends Theological Seminary or College, Friends Theological College in Kenya. So the Belizean school system is more like the Kenyan school system than the US school system. So this is working amazing. And it's just really cool to see our Kenyan ministries and our Belizean ministries connecting in this way, and to have our, the Kenyan branch of FUM sort of taking some of our people and developing them and ministering to them. And I love how global FUM is and how we are establishing all of these different connections with each other. I think it's beautiful. I'm gonna make me smaller again. In the spring, we had our first membership class. So we had 8 classes, although it took longer because we had to like skip Easter and stuff like that. And we didn't have a particular agenda for these classes. We went through a book and we read about different parts of what it means to be a Quaker and how our church is connected with Quakers throughout the United States and the world. Spiritual gifts, what are spiritual gifts? Membership, what does that mean? So we kind of left it up to the kids what they wanted to do with the class, and then if they wanted to have membership, did they want to be members? And there were 8 young people that were in this class every week, and they decided that they did want to have membership and that they wanted to be members. And so the Sunday before I left for the United States, and actually before Oscar left for the United States, so our last Sunday at church, we had this like certificate handing out, and now these guys have joined Chris as the first Belizean Quakers since Sadie Vernon. I mean, this is amazing. I'm so excited about this. And I it's amazing to be able to see this happening. And we didn't do it. Like we don't really do proselytizing even. These are just guys that are interested in community. They come to church every week. They participate in community with each other. They're interested in learning more about God. They're interested in being good men and women. And I don't know. I love going to church. They're teenagers, so sometimes it's a little overwhelming. But I'm consistently impressed by these guys. These are people that have really looked around at life and seen what's available and are trying to make something of themselves and do what they need to do to make that happen. And I love them. This is a picture from one of our membership classes. So it looks like she's sleeping, but she's not sleeping. She's looking at her baby who came to our membership class every week. We have our little baby. So this is Shauna. Excuse me. I'm actually going to tell you a whole little story about them. So Sean and Shauna had a baby last year, and they named their baby Sean Jr. So I call them the Seans. These are the Seans. When they had their baby, Sean was still in his third year of high school. The pandemic schooling was in full swing. Jobs were almost impossible to come by. Even Sean's dad lost his job right before the baby was born. It wasn't great. The baby was in the NICU for a couple of months. And when he came home, Shauna, who already finished high school, she was able to find a job at a store kind of near the seashore. In case of people who've been to Belize, she's working at Golden Bay. And Sean just really sincerely doubted at times that he'd be able to finish his third year of high school. And he started working as well. But he stayed in school. He survived his third year, went on to his fourth year. He continued high school and also worked all through his fourth year of high school. And this year, he not only passed his classes, he made the honor roll, and he was made a prefect, which is a position of leadership in Belizean schools. He graduated last month from high school and has now entered the workforce full-time. He and Shauna are true partners, supporting each other through their challenges. They're excellent parents to their baby, and I love their baby, and sometimes their baby will fall asleep on me during church, and it makes me so happy. The three of them have been faithful attenders of our church and membership class each week this year, and it's just a joy to see them. I just love them. We have also our community center. Typically, in normal life, our center does things like, we had a program between police and youth in the community. We have human trafficking awareness campaigns. So we have a police officer come and talk to kids about human trafficking, what it is, how to recognize it, what they can do about it, how they can prevent it. Belize is a source, a transit, and a destination for human trafficking. So this is an issue that probably most of these guys are going to encounter. So we talk about it, and then we play basketball because they all love basketball. So we have a basketball tournament, and it's super fun. We also have had, during my time before the pandemic, we had a women's forum. We had a different organization come from Belmopan, and they brought doctors and lawyers and social workers and counselors and food and clothes, and they had all of these resources available for people in our community. It was really awesome. One of my favorite things about our community center, which is actually true of our whole ministry, our church, our school, and our community center are all this way, but I could see it most clearly in the community center. We are super tiny. We're so small. And so what that allows us to do is to be really responsive and flexible. So when we see a need, we are able to find ways of addressing the need. So the pandemic happened, and one of the needs that we really saw, a lot of people were having problems with jobs, and a lot of people were having problems getting food. So we were able to do these little food relief packages, and we, depending on funding, we were able to distribute 48 food packages every week or two. These are designed to, they have like the basic pantry items that are meant to help feed a family of 4 for about a week. And so they were meant to reach about 200 people each week. But I heard so many stories of people, once the packages were in their homes, they would share that food further in their neighborhood. And there would be like the there was a sick lady down the street, or a single mom in the behind the yard, or somebody's girlfriend or cousin. I don't even know how many people these food packages reached. And what I loved about this is that in a time of isolation and separation, this was a tangible way to hold our community all together. Like physically, we were all like touching these things, and they were holding us together in that way. This picture, you can see some of our teen boys coming to assemble the food packages. There's our teacher, there's our administrative assistant. Later in the pandemic, we were able to hire some of the members from our church that were looking for work to assemble the food packages when school went back into session. Our staff wasn't able to do the food packages anymore. So we had these wonderful people do it faithfully the whole year. It was really cool to see our community doing this thing together. So I loved it. Another thing that happened during the pandemic was that we had all these boys suddenly out of school, and their parents were not suddenly somehow more available. So, I mean, there were a lot of paper packets. So the schools would just give a packet of paper to kids, and then the top half would be the instructions and the bottom half would be the exercises. And it was like, okay, here, teach yourself trigonometry, which, I mean, that was literally a thing that happened. So many of our kids, not our school kids, our teachers took care of our school kids, but kids from church and community center came to our center throughout the pandemic to access tutoring or transportation, or they needed help getting uniforms, or they needed a grown-up to go to the school for them because they needed to pick up food, their paper packets, or they needed to pay fees or get report cards. Not all at the same time, but throughout the pandemic, I think there were about 15 or 20 kids that accessed help in this way. And some of them were pretty regular throughout the pandemic. And this became a really kind of a large part of my job for a couple of years. And it was amazing to see the determination that these guys had to not let a global pandemic get in the way of their education. One of these guys was E, who left school at 14, and he got involved with some things that weren't necessarily helpful for his life. But 2 years later, during the pandemic, he decided he wanted to go back to school, so he did. It was amazing. He started school, it was like December 8th, I think, his first day of school. And by the middle of January, he had completed the entire first semester of work. This guy was determined, and he worked really hard. He came every day for tutoring. He did all the work he needed to do when he was at home. As time went on, he started to experience some of the social challenges and academic challenges that go with going back to school when you haven't been for a long time. There have been a number of occasions when I was afraid he was going to drop out, but he hasn't. He has just finished up his second year of high school through his intense determination and sheer force of will. And he has, I mean, there's a lot of social issues, and he deals with them, and he keeps going back to school. And he's one of the bravest people I know. And I love him too. I love my kids. So one of the things that I loved being able to do during the pandemic was watch friendships form. And I love this picture. These are, well, one of these guys is my son, and these are some of his really good friends. And there was a while that they were, everything was illegal. They weren't allowed to go anywhere. But there was a stadium called Marion Jones, and they were allowed to go there. And so they went there like a few times a week and exercised and played with each other, basically. And it was really amazing to see this friendship, which normally I wouldn't get to see because I'm a grown-up, right? Teenagers don't really have their friendships in front of grown-ups all that often. And so it was amazing. There was a moment, one of these guys lost his dad and his auntie who raised him in the same year. And there was a moment that they call it riding about. They didn't really have anywhere to go, but they weren't really ready to be home. And it was a pandemic, so there wasn't really anywhere for them to go. So they just wanted to ride around in the car and be with each other for a little longer. So I was driving down a road for no purpose. And then a song came on called My Redemption Song. And all of a sudden, all of the boys in the car started singing it together at the top of their lungs. And I could hear this was right after his dad died, but it could have been his auntie. But it was just this moment where suddenly I was in church while I was driving down the road. It's just this sacred moment. And I realized that anywhere can be church. I knew that like in theory, but it really hit me at that moment. Anywhere can be church and anyone can be a minister. So I have this what's next, but before I talk about what's next, I want to talk about stories a little bit. The south side of Belize City is a difficult place to live and an even more difficult place to grow up, as far as I can tell. But it's also filled with the kingdom of heaven. It's filled with people who resist the forces of evil, not to be too dramatic, and instead seek life, mercy, justice, peace, and love. Like most teens, these kids are often motivated by love for their families, by a desire to care for their present or future children, by a simple knowing that what they currently experience is not all that God has for them in this world. Like most teens, they often need to hear that they are precious, that they are glorious children of God, and that they matter. I'm telling you, I just told you 3 stories. I think I might tell you one more. Just a few of these stories, but every single one of our kids has a story like this. They are stories of grace, resilience, and determination. They are kingdom of God stories. And the truth is, so is my story. And so are my own kids' stories. And I'd be willing to bet so is your story. My dad said recently that none of us gets out of this life easy. And I think that's true. I think in this world we have trouble, but we have Jesus, who has already overcome the troubles in this world, so we can be hopeful through everything. There's one verse there's a word, it's often in the New Testament, it's in the Septuagint too, but it's sozo. Actually, here you can see it. That's sozo, and it's the Greek word. It's often translated salvation, and it equally means rescue and healing. However challenging our circumstances are, either here in Belize City where the Spirit is working, or in Wilmington yearly meeting where the Spirit is working, God may rescue us from any of it. And if there's no rescue, there is healing. That's what I have been having the amazing privilege to witness in Belize, and I'm certain it's happening in Wilmington yearly meeting too. I am going to tell you about a student that we have right now, a current student. I'll call him Jaden. Jaden is in our reading program, And he has been for 2.5 years. This is supposed to be a 1-year program, but he's been there for 2.5 years. He's struggling through the trauma of parent loss and frequent housing changes as he's being passed from relative to family friend back to relative. He is bright and enthusiastic. He's affectionate and cheerful. He brings me joy every time I see him with his big smile and warm hugs. But he really struggles with his memory, which is a common thing with traumatized people. And as he enters adolescence without a stable home environment, he is being attracted to the community that he can find in gang involvement. We're doing everything we can at school to love him and get him connected with community resources, including counseling and a local summer basketball program. He attended school every day last year, except he was gone for 3 days. And so we went looking for him, like we drove around Belize City looking for him. And when we found him, he said he'd been sick, but he hadn't told us. So we're like, where's Jaden? And we brought him back to school that day because he wasn't that sick. He was walking around. All right. So come back to school then. In May, he let me replace his blue bandana, which is a sign of gang association, with a black bandana, which is a sign of neutrality. He's beginning to understand the dangers of the choices he's been flirting with. The last I saw, he was very excited about the summer basketball program. I really hope he's attending. I hope he's staying safe this summer, but I do worry for him. I am worried about the choices that he's making when he's not coming to school every day. And I ask you to please pray for him. Pray for all our kids. And we actually, in our church, we agreed to also pray for the kids of the people that I go to, because in the spirit, we are connected through vast distance. And I'm grateful for the prayers that you pray for our kids, and we are praying for your kids too. So what's next for our community in the coming years? I struggle with making plans after this pandemic. By design, I'm a very plan-oriented person. I typically have the next 5 years of my life planned in a pretty detailed way. Well, the pandemic has kind of exploded that. Every time I make a plan, something happens and it changes. I mean, case in point, I'm here talking to you in a video. Plans changed so dramatically during the pandemic in Belize. So I hesitate to say too strongly what I hope will happen this year, or what I think will happen this year, but I can tell you what I hope. I forget about them sometimes, so I'm going to read them. Well, there's a lot of things in my mind, so sometimes I forget ones that I really want to tell you about, so I write them down. Okay, so what I am really hoping, well, first of all, I'm excited to see Wilmington College come in March. Woo, woo! I'm really excited about that. I know Oscar is too, and our kids aren't, because they don't know you're coming yet, but when they know you're coming, then they'll be excited. I'm hoping to finish up some bureaucratic issues facing our school, particularly changing our school's name. Right now, we're Belize Friends Boys School, and we're changing it to Belize Friends School to make it more evident that we are open to girls, that we want girls, that we love girls. And I'm excited to see a computer lab being put into our school building. I would love to see our enrollment increase. During the pandemic, our enrollment has plummeted. Well, that's not true. It started a couple of years ago with some licensing stuff, but during the pandemic, it did go down quite a lot. We had our ESL program, our PSC prep program, our reading program, and we had 11 to 15 kids each time. We have 11, well, it's usually around 15. We have 11 registered so far this year, which means if we don't do anything else, we'll have about 15 in the coming year. Because there's always kids that come at the beginning of the year, but we have our principal and our teachers doing recruitment. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have more than 20 students this year. We'll see how that goes. During the pandemic, schools have been going to extraordinary lengths to retain their students, and which has been unusual for Belize, but they have been putting a lot of effort into finding out what their kids need and getting that, and forming their lessons to be able to help the kids learn stuff, which is amazing. I'm so excited. It's really good for kids to be able to stay in their school and succeed in their school. And we also haven't been having the PSE. So we have had a drastic reduction in the demographic for our school. And I think as school begins to go back to normal next year, that will change again. I think we'll have, again, schools that are not able to put so much energy into kids that are struggling, and we will have more kids coming to us. So we'll see what happens there. I can't say what will happen, but I know that our school is here, and that for the kids that come to us, we are really important to the ways that they're changing their lives. And I'm so grateful that we're there. I'm also excited to see, I told you I forget things. Oh, this is one of the things I'm most excited about in the coming years. I am so excited to see how the kids at church, I say kids, I mean, they're young adults. Some of them are like not even teenagers anymore, but I'm really excited to see how these young people continue to develop and discern what it means to be a Belizean Quaker. I think that's going to be just awesome to watch. This picture here, this was at our last church outing. So this is like, I don't know, a third of the guys that were there. And I could just hear them laughing and playing with each other when I look at this picture, and I love it. Ways that you could get involved. I mean, most of you already are, because of Wilmington Yearly Meeting is huge for us in Belize, huge. So probably you're already involved through Wilmington Yearly Meeting. And then if you are interested in doing anything as an individual, either for my ministry, I'm doing fundraising right now this summer so that I can go, that I can keep working, or for the school or the community center or the church, then you can send money to FUM and you can say that it's for me, or for Belize General is really the most useful place to send it so that we can use it for whatever is needed. We are not funded through the FUM General Fund. So designated donations are really important for us to survive, which I mean, these things. Okay, the other thing that you could do is pray for us. We need so much prayer. It is constantly stressful. There is always something stressful happening. And I mean, this is a really hard place. So there's things that happen. Last year, I was doing some paperwork in my office, and then a woman came and told me a horror story about one of my students. And I brought her to social workers where I heard more of the horror story. And then I dropped her off at a psychologist. And then I went back to my office where I sat and looked at my quiet walls. And I couldn't even work anymore that day because of the things that I had heard was so, well, I couldn't do the paperwork. I did other work with some of the kids that needed stuff in the afternoon. But it's so unexpected when things will happen. So we need constant prayer so that we are always prepared for the unexpected. And then a third way, which is really important for me personally, I think for our whole school, but our whole center church, but for me personally, it's really lonely for me here in Belize. I don't have any friends here. I mean, the pandemic has just ended. The restrictions, I say ending, restrictions decreased just in April, and then I left in June. And before that, socializing was actually illegal. So I have no friends, and it's been 3 years, and my husband is the same, and it's very lonely. And sometimes people send me cards or emails, and then I can remember that I'm part of a larger community and I'm not here by myself. I'm here for you. I'm here as part of you. I'm here being the point person for all that you're doing in Belize. And it's really helpful for me to be reminded that I'm not forgotten and I'm not alone. So encouragement is a huge thing that you can do if you want to be involved with what we're doing in Belize. That would be really powerful. And finally, I want to tell you, thank you. I know that you guys have had fundraisers for us. I know that you send people to us. I know that you pray for us. I know that you send cards and you send, oh, Wilmington, I have to tell you, you send money for parties. No one else does that. And it's so important. And we never have enough money, right? So we can't have these fun times with our kids out of our regular budget. And so when you send money and you say this is for a party, then we can have a party. And that's really, especially during hard times, it's really important for us as a community to get together and relax and eat some snacks and, I don't know, listen to music. I don't know what we do at parties. We play, we sit in circles and eat cake and stare at each other. I don't know. It depends who's at the party, but it's amazing. And oh, you guys also helped to send our teachers to a restaurant on Key Cocker. So we went just for a few hours, and it was the first Teachers Day celebration that we've had the whole time I've been here because of the pandemic. And so it was the first time that our teachers have felt recognized and appreciated in that way, because Teachers Day is a national holiday in Belize and it's kind of a big deal, and we haven't been able to do it. And to be able to do this really big thing for them because of you, and I told them it's because of you, and they know who you are because you send Wilmington College. It was awesome and really appreciated. Thank you for everything that you do. We would not be able to be here in Belize, here for these kids that need to be reminded to keep going to school and not quit on themselves, or need to have a church to come to and be with friends who are also staying in school, or need to come to a school where they can have one last chance to pass that PSE and go to high school or trade school. And we couldn't be here without you. And I'm grateful and thank you. Whenever I ask people what they want me to say, that's what they say. Just tell them thank you. So thank you from Belize. On one of these papers, this would normally be a time that, wow, I left no transition in there. But normally this would be when I would open up for questions. And I'm not there to hear your questions. So I wrote down some of the things that people say a lot to me. There's just a few questions. And then seriously, guys, if you have more questions for me, please send me emails, give me a call. I'm thrilled to have video chats with you. Hopefully I'll be able to come to Wilmington. Since I wasn't able to come this summer, I'm hoping, again, plans, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to get there in the fall to be with you. So one of the questions that I get a lot is, how is COVID doing in Belize? I think it's okay right now. It seems to be getting a lot more mild, and I don't know, I just don't hear about it that much anymore. But we are getting sick. Like I got sick last week, but it's more like a cold. So it seems like people are more willing to start a normal life. Like at the end of August, school will go back like pre-pandemic schedules. All the schools will be in all pre-pandemic schedules, which is exciting and scary. And so I think we're just going to do it carefully, and we're going to keep our masks, and we're going to keep our hand sanitizers, and we're going to start going. I don't want to say going back to normal life, but like forging a new normal. So that's pretty much how we're doing with COVID here. There's not a big spike, and the hospitals are not overwhelmed anymore. So I'm really grateful for that. Another thing is, where are all the girls? Well, I don't know. We have about 2 or 3 girls each year at school. And then in our church, we have our young mother, Shauna. We have Alex is a single dad who brings his 3 daughters. So we have them. We have Giovanni, who's a single mom. She has 2 daughters and a son, and she brings them. So we have a few girls. And I mean, even Shauna didn't start coming to church until she had her baby. So I think that as time goes on and the boys in our church start to make their families and the girls in our church start to grow up, then we will get our girls slowly over time, organically, which is how our whole ministry really has grown. We are not, I don't know, like we don't go out recruiting girls, but when I see opportunities to interact with girls, I sure take them. But we are going with the flow of the Holy Spirit, and I think we'll have our girls eventually. Another question that I get asked a lot is like, explain Elijah. Like, not everyone realizes that he's with us. So yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, a couple of years ago, he came to live with us. He got in trouble for a mask violation. He was riding a bike with his mask pulled under his chin, and at that time they were arresting people for doing that. So they arrested him. So he needed a safe place to stay for a month while he waited for a court date, and so he came to stay with us. And then school went back online, and he stayed with us for that. And then over the next few months, he just like became part of our family. We became his family, and we're family. So, oh, and today we'll find out if we're adopting him or not. Okay, so that's happening. I will try to send an update so that you won't be left in suspense forever. Whoever might be feeling suspense, I don't know. But I'll try to send y'all an update and tell you what happens today. And hopefully it's good news. Another question that I get a lot is about Brian. What is he doing at Georgetown? Brian is going for a master's degree in data science for public policy. So it's like data science and machine learning as a way of processing information that lawmakers and people like that can use to form solid, good, hopefully public policy. So he's really excited about that. He does have to live in Washington, D.C. to do that program, and it is a 2-year program. So pray for us, like seriously, pray for us. We are excited for him, but also nervous. It's going to be a really hard thing to not have Brian at home all the time. We are just going to see what happens and go day by day and week by week, month by month, and it will be okay. And I'm not really thinking of other questions that I get a lot. There's usually some interesting, unique question everywhere. And I'm so sorry that I can't hear your unique questions right now and answer them, but I really do want to communicate with you. So let me know. My email is nikkih@fum.org. I'm going to say that again. So if you have any questions that you want to send to me, my email is nikkih@fum.org. And then, of course, Hannah and Nancy and Katie, they can get you in touch with me as well. And I guess this ends it. I hope this wasn't hugely boring for you. Just one long video. But I miss you, Wilmington Yearly Meeting. I hope to see you soon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye.